The sensation of the hyperbolic time chamber felt very unreal. No wonder. It was hard to describe absolutely nothingness. Or was it something after all? Piccolo wasn't sure if the endless field of white was how it truly looked, or if it was just his brain filling in the blanks. For a moment, Trunks' words echoed in his head. Wait, what? You want to take a toddler inside? Maybe the time traveler was right. Maybe this wasn't the right place for his child after all. But still, they were in now, and there was no going back. He looked down toward his progeny with as much care as he could muster. Are you okay there, Baseri? The child looked around, unsure.
Yeah, it's kind of spooky. I don't really like it.
Yeah, me neither, kid. Me neither.
He tried to focus his gaze on the structures that were left here to try and aid their training.
But I know this is important.
Baseri tried to look brave, which quickly got Piccolo's approval.
It's okay to be scared, you know. Even I can be from time to time. But sometimes, doing the right thing means that you do stuff despite the fact that you might be afraid. Let's begin.
The first couple of days or weeks, it was hard to track time in this blasted place. Anyway, they spent them on some basic training. While Baseri's latent power was quite impressive, he was lacking the very basic abilities of dodging, flying, and a lot of other things that someone of his strength should already know by now, or even have mastered. It was like training with Gohan when he was a child all over again, except there was no wilderness to be distracted by, and Piccolo wasn't as harsh. He was, of course, still demanding, but he knew when to stop and give his son some rest. He also encouraged him to try and heal his own bruises instead of relying on sensu beans or just general bed rest. Something that he only briefly remembered from Kami's memories was now being placed within his memory. It was kind of odd to experience, the weirdness of the situation. Him having the memories of both Nail and Kami together. It wasn't really overwhelming before he started thinking about it. It was like accessing your own muddled memories from your childhood that had been neglected for so long but suddenly brought back to the fore. Those that you're not quite sure if they really happened or if you just dreamt them. It also felt quite invasive. He wasn't too sure whether he liked it. But still, Piccolo quickly realized that his son was much better at healing someone else's injuries than his own. He had to use the triform technique to spice things up a little bit and give himself an opponent that could hurt them. Baseri wasn't really a fan of this, as he hated to see his dad get hurt, and surprisingly, he would get quite vocal about this. But for Piccolo, this was a good sign. He had started to develop a personality, different from his own, and even the ability to express displeasure with certain decisions of his father were welcoming. He was starting to understand things, despite the unwelcome conditions in this alien, almost quasi-metaphorical state that the two of them had found themselves in. Baseri was truly growing into his own person, instead of just being a little runt who needed constant protection, scared of the world. They talked, even though Piccolo was not a big fan of small talk, as he wanted to know his son's feelings and opinions about things, get to know him. He revealed that the memories of the old timeline had been quite blurry, and that he much better remembered things that had happened here, especially since Piccolo had fused with Kami. He knew everybody here, and he talked a lot about both Gohans and how he felt happy and safe around both of them, not one or the other. It felt the same. And now he had the same feeling as his dad. There was no discord, no guilt.
Guilt?
Piccolo asked, surprised hearing this.
Every time we tried to talk, I felt guilty, as if I did something wrong, Dad. But for you and Kami became one.
Why would you feel guilt, Baseri? You did nothing wrong.
The kid looked to his feet.
I don't know.
Maybe it's something that the other me and the other Kami left with you? Just like all that anger that my father left for me?
What was he like?
Who, my father? Well, you'd have to ask Goku about that, or Kami, but it's a little bit too late for that.
Baseri then scratched his head.
Yeah, but you're Kami now.
What? Piccolo paused, but the kid was right. He was Kami right now. And what could he remember? What he truly remembered? The Namekian knew that for the Guardian King Piccolo, it was that part of himself that he truly hated, something that he wanted to get rid of. But was that truly it? He opened himself to the memories. There are a lot of emotions hidden deep within, locked away from the world. It was at this moment that he realized that Kami was overwhelmingly lonely, despite the companionship of Mr. Popo being around constantly, and to a lesser extent the likes of Korin. There was a feeling of imprisonment that conflicted with a sense of duty. There was a fear of his bad side returning to spoil his sacred oath, but there was also a feeling of missing something, like there was a part of him lost. There was a deeply buried feeling of unjust treatment by the previous guardian, of the necessity of sacrificing part of oneself in order to become the candidate. The other candidate didn't have to do that. Why was he forced to do so? Was it some kind of test? It was as if he had to sacrifice his own brother in order to be worthy. Was the other candidate then ever truly considered, seeing how quickly he turned to darkness after rejection? Was the previous guardian to both of them so short-sighted that he hadn't seen the true evil in his own midst right there, and he'd almost given him the green light? Or was it something else? Was it just some big game in order to make him the perfect replacement, the next guardian of Earth? Dad? Baseri's voice got him back towards reality.
Yes, son?
You were staring into the void for quite a while. I was getting worried.
The smaller Namekian said shyly.
No. You did well. And as for your question, I guess if I could describe my dad shortly, it would be permanently dissatisfied. He was doing more and more evil deeds because he couldn't fill the void that the procedure had left in him. But Kami, being the good half, understood that longing better. He would never get that even ruling the world. It wouldn't give him the fulfillment he was looking for.
That's a lot of hard words, but I think I understand.
Of course you do. You're a very smart young Namekian.
Baseri smiled brightly. His little face felt rounder and more pleased with himself.
Dad?
Yes, son?
I love you.
There was a pause. No one ever said that to him before. Not even Gohan. At least, not directly. They knew that they had a loving connection, a loving relationship, as some kind of surrogate family, but this was the first time anybody had said that to him. For both of them, for both Kami and Piccolo, that somebody had actually said that.
I love you too, son,
he said. Sounded weird, doesn't sound like him. But it did make him feel better. No, it made both of them feel better. They spent some good quality time there just sitting together. Maybe it wasn't productive in the traditional sense, but it was healthy. Both of them were healing. But still, they couldn't stay like this for long. They had to do more. Train and learn more advanced techniques. The Masenko was the first technique, as Piccolo decided that the likes of the special beam cannon might be a little bit too much for the kid to understand right now. But Baseri did get it, at least the basics. The aim could still be better, yeah, as he burnt one of the columns, but still, it felt like a good start to then develop. And there was something that Baseri was struggling with. Proper martial arts, the technique of physical combat.
Come on! You gotta attack! Punch me!
I don't wanna!
Oh, come on! You can't only focus on one aspect of your training, kid!
I don't wanna see you get hurt! I hate this! I don't wanna cause this!
Piccolo took that opportunity to place a hand on his head.
Baseri, you could never hurt me. Not really. Even if you cause some bruises, you'll make me proud. Outside there, all of that, there's a monster that threatens our friends. Both Gohans were included, and Trunks. Sure, we're not the first line of defense, but who knows? What else are we gonna do? We need to be ready, kid. I know that I demand a lot from you right now, but That is because I know how much potential you got in there. You just need to stop holding back. Nothing that you do here can be wrong. If you want to help me, please try and break through this. If you really can't, I won't push you. But I want you to at least try.
A long pause, and then more looking toward his feet. Then Baseri raised his head, his eyes gaining a spark that Piccolo hadn't seen before.
All right, I'll try. For my friends. And for you.
His father nodded and quickly blocked his attempt at a kick. It wasn't very good, but it was something.
Very good,
He smiled.
One more time.
Time passed, and Baseri was still better at key protection than close-quarter combat, but at least now he was trying to improve that. Piccolo could see some odd focus that he hadn't seen before. Still, the progress wasn't as vast as the Namekian had hoped for, and truth be told, he didn't want to push his son any further. And the funny thing is if that were Gohan, he probably wouldn't have had any second thoughts about this, but he had learned a lot since then, and he wanted to give Baseri something that King Piccolo had never given him: choice. Maybe he was still too pushy about it. Well, all of that was new for both of them, and he had that feeling that his son was enjoying their time together. Way more before he got harder on the martial arts training, of course, but he decided to give it one last go.
So, Baseri, I see that you really dislike the martial arts part of our training. So this is the last time I'm gonna bother you with that. I want you to hit me. I'll dodge all your attacks. You need one singular hit. If I see that you struggle, and by extension suffer, we'll be back to our key attacks, alright? Don't force yourself too much.
Baseri hung his little head in shame.
So I've disappointed you, haven't I?
No. I have to remind myself that you are your own person, and there will be things that we cannot share, and that's alright. I just want you to give it one last try.
Baseri's little hand went into his pocket.
I won't fail you this time. I promise.
Only if you feel like it.
The boy felt the warmth of the small marble, and then it became cold, like stone. For a second, he felt like something was tangled around his fingers, like a little scaly ring.
I'm ready.
Piccolo then created his three forms that were moving about very fast.
Remember, you can't use key attacks.
Baseri tried to approach one of them, but whenever he would get close, they shifted their positions almost at once. It was like a wild goose chase.
Concentrate! If you focus, you'll see where I'll be.
Baseri opened his mind, but his father was moving too fast. He was too small, too weak. Or was he? Maybe in reality, he had the power needed to do so all this time. He just chose to close it in that small frame. He thought about Cell, the terrifying creature that devoured the monsters that destroyed its original home, as if they were nothing. He thought about the Gohans, counting on them, Trunks, and all of the others that had shown him kindness. Goku, Chi-Chi, and Dad. He was so safe and comfy being a kid, being held by them, comforted and hugged. Everything felt simpler, less scary. It was a good time, but everybody had to grow up. One day, he screamed loudly at the top of his lungs, scaring the likes of Piccolo. The energy gathered around him, and at that very moment, Baseri decided to shed his safe, marketable form once and for all. He grew up to be almost as tall as his father, with his face still retaining that brighter shade of green that he had. He felt as if his muscles were on fire because they reformed to give him a very fit physique. But the new arms were longer, stronger. As he screamed, they stretched outward like two tentacles and hit all three Piccolos, tossing them aside. When he finished screaming, they returned to their regular length. No, to their new length. Piccolo was looking in shock and awe at his son. No longer a toddler, but a young man, breathing heavily, trying to get used to his new form.
But Bansuri, are you alright?
Are you?
He heard his new voice for the first time. It initially scared him. Piccolo flew up to him and placed both of his hands on his arms.
I'm speechless. Whatever you did.
It's just as you said, Father.
He smiled. I stopped holding back.
You didn't have to.
No, you're right. Nobody knows what else we'll have to do.
I'm very proud of you, son.
Baseri looked down. This one thing hadn't changed.
Thanks, Dad.
And then they embraced. A new chapter was opened for the Namekian father and his son. The training sessions felt like they'd just begun. Outside of the time chamber, everyone was anxious for the Namekians. While they understood Piccolo's motivation, they all felt that it might have been a little bit too early for Baseri, and that it might not work well for him. Imagine their reactions when the door to the White Void finally opened. Takiko was the first to notice the Namekian young man stepping out, his gi resembling a mixture of the Turtle School one and the one worn by Piccolo.
Baseri, is that you?
Hello, Gohan. It's nice to see you, my friend.
And that's where we're going to be leaving things right now.